Daybreak in the city, and the sounds of worship come not from the east, but from morning assembly at an English primary school. In the school, the mingling of a dozen cultures mirror life in an area of Bristol which hit the world headlines exactly 5 years ago.
Cabot School is St Paul's in a sense. What happens in Cabot School is what happens in St Paul's, but in its best sense.
And a school that could be a model for things to come.
It's a real pool of integration. We have so much happening, and the children bring in their languages, which are very different to the one you might find in an ordinary British school. We have different ways of dressing, we have different ways of worship, we have different ways of playing, different ways of learning. The whole thing's very exciting because you see children from different cultures having to work it out together, and on the whole they're quite successful.
Cabot School is around 86% black. Of the 225 children, only 34 are white. There are children of 10 different races, 6 religions. Between them, they speak at least 11 languages. An extraordinary mixture of countries and cultures, just like St Paul's itself. But it's a mix that's rich yet volatile. 5 years ago, in April 1980, St Paul's exploded as resentment overflowed in an area where it was least expected. An orgy of burning and looting followed, so violent that the police withdrew from the area. St Paul's was suddenly on the world map and on the lips of politicians, sociologists, academics. What had gone wrong? Committees came and went. Inquiries were held, money was pumped in, although to what effect is still the subject of bitter debate. And all this in peaceful St Paul's. It was unbelievable.
We're only a few yards away from the scene of the riots 5 years ago, and it's incredible to think what happened in one day, how it shook us out of our complacency, how much violence could be demonstrated, things you would probably only expect to see in a film, how it was actually happening in front of little children, teachers, and of course the police. Incredible that it should happen, incredible that life has gone on. I don't think anyone forgets. We all had to adjust to stop it happening again.
A start was in a new understanding of the different backgrounds and needs of the children due to become the citizens of tomorrow, some from exotic climes far removed from the drab inner city. One glance inside shows that this is no ordinary school, but the differences go far beyond a few signs in Arabic. Adrian Smith, now celebrating 10 years as headmaster, has introduced a style of teaching that makes this one of the most unusual schools in Britain.
Oh, is it the thing we dealt with earlier? Yeah, excuse me, I have to come back to that.
They may come from the west, they may come from the east, but children of different races can be united to face the modern world. Cabot School educates children from Tanzania and Nigeria, from Jamaica and the Caribbean islands, children from India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, from Vietnam and the Far East. In this school, the different races learn about each other. It's a model of what a recent government report said was the way we should be educating our ethnic minorities. Instead of being ignored, their customs are now taught as part of normal classroom work, actively encouraged and practiced throughout the school. How many others celebrate the Chinese New Year, cope with the fasting of Ramadan, or allow time off for a family pilgrimage to Mecca?
We now have third generation, but some are still first generation, just arriving in this country. They are very different. One can walk into a home and you will find the Punjab.
The theory is that bringing different cultures into the school encourages understanding and tolerance by making them part of everyday life. It's given an enormous boost to racial harmony between the children.
A few years ago, the problem was that we were a problem to the children. We didn't understand what was going on within their acts of worship. So if they wanted a day off and it wasn't Christmas, we couldn't understand that. Or if children had to be late for some reason that wasn't within my cultural norms, I wanted to know why, and I wanted it in writing. And that was very disrespectful.
Every day, these children make their way to a special area that's been set aside for them in the new school. A compass checks the exact location of Mecca. And here, in a school in St. Paul's, the children join countless millions of others around the world in their praise of Allah. The sacred prayer mats, heads covered, the rituals strictly and precisely observed, and they pray 5 times a day. On the surface, the school seems a happy mix of races, colours and creeds, all cheerfully combined. But a closer look shows it's not quite as it seems.
We'd like to think it's a happy school and children just play as children. But if you look quite carefully, you'll see that the different ethnic groups tend to come together for their playtimes. And this is a little concern to us. We've gone through the times when we thought they don't mix. But in fact, just the Asian girls you'll see down there are playing and talking together. The Pakistani boys are here playing a particular game from Pakistan. And in the middle here, we've got a Jamaican game going on with one girl leading it. But in fact, she's got a nice mix of children around here, boy, girl, or Jamaican, Pakistani. They're all British children, really.
And you've got some Vietnamese down here in the corner
yes,
as well.
They're talking nicely. They're obviously sharing thoughts from home and each other's families. And that's something we think is important, that they can have in their playtime a chance to talk about things that matter within their culture. Nobody minds if that group just happens to come together. But when they say, you can't join us, or I'm not allowed to play because my mum says so, or my dad says so, that concerns us because it's the early formation of prejudice.
So even here in a playground, you've got your eyes open for the seeds of prejudice.
Yes, indeed, because children are obviously picking up our opinions and each other's opinions, and what are they bringing from home?
Do they tend to exclude each other?
It does happen from time to time. Not only happens boy-girl, it happens between different ethnic groups. Yes, it does happen.
Do you remember about poem about 5 mice? Yes. So how many mice were there? 5.
And special teachers are now brought in to teach mother tongue languages, not just to the youngsters from that particular country, but all their classmates too.
4, 5. Now, same in Urdu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These children, when they come to school, they don't have no English at all. And they feel not comfortable in school. When I come here, I talk to them in their own mother tongue and tell them stories in English and mother tongue and some poems in mother tongue, so that they feel happy when they are in school and learn both languages, English and mother tongue.
But trying to learn so much must surely be a collective disadvantage to the children. The school says not.
Those who are familiar with Urdu and Punjabi, they're perfectly competent within that language. And we have to make sure that they become equally competent in school English, standard English.
And good basic English is still the priority. There are children of 6 nationalities learning it here. In Cabot School, it's the whites who are outnumbered. And in the urgency of making sure that everything is just so for what are usually the ethnic minorities, the white youngsters have become a sort of ethnic minority themselves.
I'd like to think they weren't disadvantaged at all. I think that it's bound to be different for them, isn't it? The disadvantage that people will be thinking about now is they've got all those different languages about them. If the teacher's coping with that language, then they're not coping with the white child's language. If things are different in this school, do we have the extra staff to deal with it? Well, yes, we do. The Education Authority knows that life is going to be different and it's going to affect the indigenous white children. The fear that white parents have, I hope we undo. I hope those white children don't suffer. But what's the advantage? Those white children are meeting early in their lives children from different cultures. And they're my future, and my stake's with them, thank you very much, because they learn what it's like to be in a multiracial society.
By and large, health is excellent, but there's extra medical screening all the same. There have been occasional difficulties in the past caused by diet. Also, it seems some groups aren't as ready to take their children to the doctors as the rest of us. But in nursing too, there are sensitivities.
Sometimes the Asian girls don't like undressing, and I never press the point because this is part of their culture, and I take this into consideration. The Rastafarians don't like me looking at their hair, and we've got a very good mother who checks all the Rastafarians' hair for us. I believe it's sacred and it's supposed to be only handled in the privacy of their own homes.
Well, it was a problem for us, first of all, because we didn't understand. And if a teacher said, everybody change for PE, and somebody would say, I can't. Why not? Because I can't uncover my arms and legs. So we think about it, we talk with parents, fine, tracksuit will do, no problem. So it's a question of saying, this is different, this is how we solve it, rather than saying, you're different, get into line. Yes, I wanted to talk to you about Serena's eyes. We're having great difficulty in getting Dad's permission to get to the optician or have the optician in school. I think it's something to do with Dad feeling nervous about his daughter wearing glasses. As she gets older, marriage has got to be arranged.
The age-old preservation of female modesty and honour is still of vital importance in many countries, but in a British school it can cause trouble. In senior schools, some fathers are reluctant to allow daughters to mix with boys at all.
Different religions and different cultures put value on whether you're a boy or whether you're a girl. I think English society does that too. It's just emerging from it, I suppose, we'd like to think. But the problems can be that young girls, as they leave us and go into further education, parents are saying, you don't need it. Or it could be that those values mean that certain subjects aren't covered, or that school isn't attended at all. Because the future lifestyle is already worked out. They're going to be matched with somebody else. They're going to marry somebody else. They're going to go abroad. Or that mum is mum and doesn't need to be anything else but that.
Do girls still go back to arranged marriages?
Yes. It's more likely that the marriage settles here than abroad, I think. But it does happen. The marriage is arranged. It's done very nicely. I don't know all the detail of that, but I've yet to meet an unhappy arranged marriage.
And yet, despite all the anxiety to get things right, there's still only one black teacher on the staff. It's the cause of some slight embarrassment.
I don't think it is right, but I think that quality is just as important as quantity. So I do believe in positive discrimination in the sense that more opportunities should be made for the youngsters to get the chance to get the necessary qualifications to get on teacher training courses. Not that they should just get in because they are black, but that they should be helped to see the need for more black teachers and help to actually get the required qualification and standards. So there'll be no chance of someone turning around and saying, oh, well, they only got in because they're black and we have a range of second-class teachers. We set out to give the children the best education, or the best starting education that we can. And I think perhaps we achieve that, but the constraints perhaps of the society outside negates that as they go through the system, especially black children.
How does it work against you?
In terms of the kind of image that they see themselves being portrayed as. I mean, black people are never portrayed as having done anything important. It's always the Oxfam image. And I think it's quite easy to see that your place in society is perhaps quite limited and of no value. And therefore there's no point in working, there's no point in trying to achieve anything.
I want to know why more children from this school or from St Paul's or Easton cannot get into the normal run of jobs in society and into the responsible positions that we expect from anybody who goes to a British school, where the black, Sikh, the Asian magistrates, why aren't there more bank clerks, why aren't there more black teachers, even more people doing ordinary jobs They're great people. We should just trust them to do their job, give them the responsibility, and you get the results. Shy away from it, and we're going to get disaster.
But figures suggest that for black youngsters, it's 2 or 3 times harder to get a job, and it's the cause of deep resentment. Adrian Smith married a black girl from St. Paul's. Jeanette Smith became a secretary and got out by her own efforts. She says her husband's pupils have to realize it's going to be harder for them.
I think some of them hasn't got the sort of get up and go out and get what you want, you know, which I've had to do. I mean, I was determined. I said, right, I'm not going to be like the rest of them. I want to be independent. You know, I knew what I want, so I went out and got it. You know,
It does work, does it?
I think if you've got willpower and you know, you can, you haven't got sort of think that, you know, you're not going to bother after the first attempt. You keep trying, don't you?
Being the headmaster of a school in an area like this, it must be a great advantage having a black wife.
Yeah, she's my wife, and she happens to be black. She's not. I didn't marry her because she's black, obviously. But yes, it's a great advantage. It gives me extraordinary insight into what's happening. I can quickly cross-check my own judgments on things, and it gives me a bit of empathy with the community here. But sometimes it backfires. You know, people have said to me, just because you've got a black wife, you know, don't think you know it all. And,
Do they really say that?
Oh yeah, a few other things too. But so I can't take things for granted.
Even the food. School cooking was never like this.
Food is a very important part of our day here. At the present time, the children who cannot eat what I will call English meat have a vegetarian diet. That's not quite right, because those children will eat meat that is blessed in a special way and slaughtered in a special way, and we're hoping to do something about that quite soon. The Rasta children tend to want whole meal diets, and we can't cater for that, and the parents know we can't, so they have those children at home. The way the children eat is interesting. In school, we usually expect the children to use a knife, fork, spoon, and that's preferable for those children too, otherwise they feel a little bit out of place. But of course in their homes, a knife and fork is totally irrelevant. It just is not necessary. And before anybody thinks, yuck, what a horrible way to eat, you should join those families and share with them.
Some families have simply transplanted their original way of life from one side of the world to the other. The children are British, but for the parents and grandparents, little has changed, apart from the location. In these youngsters, East and West are truly blended.
And you've got to finish all of them before you watch your Night Rider.
The clothing may be different, but doing homework in front of the telly is pretty familiar. The Majid family came here in 1958. They were farmers from the plains around Lahore. The grandparents are still the head of the family group. Sons and daughters live nearby with children of their own. 2 have already passed through Cabot School. 2 more are still there. The Majids like Bristol. They've settled happily in and around St. Paul's. The family bond is very strong. Religion, respect, dress and custom are central to the way of life, and the children are expected to follow.
Because it's part of our heritage, because it's our religion, and I think the children should realise what that means to them. Although they live in this country now, which is totally different attitudes to religion and things like that, I think it's important that they should realise what their parents understand about religion, what they think about religion, about their custom, and the younger generation should understand that.
But the ties with the family back home in the Punjab are powerful. Grandmother and her eldest daughter are still Punjabis in spirit. They still don't speak English.
That's a bit of a problem, actually, going shopping and things like that, or seeing the doctor. But they're trying to cope with it. They sort of get, like Fazana's mum, she sort of sits down with her. She teaches her Urdu and asks Fazana to teach her English. So they're sort of swapping roles, sort of learning from the children.
Have they found it difficult to learn English?
Oh yeah, because when they came to this country, they don't know nothing about the English and music. So when they reach over here, they've seen everything was different than that country, you see. So they did try very hardly to speak English, but up to now they didn't pick up properly, you see.
So what happens if you go out shopping?
Well, I sort of translate. I translate. If I translate in English for her, and she tells me, you know, and I translate that into English for the shopkeeper if he doesn't know how to speak English.
So, integration advances generation by generation. Even so, the British system means that many of these children will be consigned to a second-class life. Most things are bright and beautiful when you're 5 or 6, but there's evidence that despite all the special care they get in this school, some of these children will begin to slip behind, even by the age of 8. Only last month, the Swan Report presented a picture of discrimination and failure among some of the ethnic groups, underachieving as the jargon has it. Why? Adrian Smith says that even though the opportunities are equal in theory, the youngsters just don't start equal, often because of their background.
I travelled in a big boat to Japan, and then I travelled on an airplane to Hong Kong. And then I travelled on a big boat to England.
We took out
The Swan Report, the result of a 5-year inquiry into the teaching of ethnic groups in our schools, says the law should be changed to make their education more appropriate. Cabot School is already acknowledged to be caring in the way it deals with its wide and varied population. The sense of involvement and community is constantly emphasized. Mothers are encouraged to come in to show off their style of cooking. Mrs. Angus comes from Nigeria. On the menu, plantain fritters.
You don't like it?
But as well as the more unusual problems, there are still the normal run of daily difficulties that a school has to deal with. This mother has been summoned because her daughter's been sick. Little Jackie Quaker comes from Tanzania, and she's at Cabot School for 2 years, while her father, a doctor, is on a medical course here.
All right. Sometimes it happens. My little girl felt a bit sick this morning, didn't want to go to school, and I said I don't want to go to school either. My wife said, you've got to go to school, you're the headmaster.
Does she still speak Swahili?
Yes, at home mainly, because she doesn't have a lot of children to talk Swahili to, so she doesn't speak Swahili at school at all. But at home, we try to speak to her and try to teach her so that she won't forget it.
The Swan Report urged more consideration of the children's background and customs. In schools like this, you've even got to be an expert on hairstyles. Again, parents and relatives are involved.
I'm going to put an extension piece of hair into Elena's hair to make it that longer length. By doing that, I'm starting from the roots of the hair, taking bits at a time.
What's that called?
Cane row plaiting.
How long does it take to do a full head of hair like that?
Around 3.5 hours.
Isn't it hard to keep clean?
No, it isn't. You can wash it every 2 weeks.
It doesn't come loose?
It may come loose, slightly loose, but as long as it stays tidy, it's all right.
And what are the advantages?
The advantages, one advantage is not, you don't have to comb it every day.
So you can get up in the morning looking beautiful?
Yes.
Religion, too, needs a delicate touch when you're handling 6 faiths. This is Nativity, St. Paul style.
She lived in the middle of
On the whole, we can get away with the line, there is but one God. But how you approach the worship of that God is different and not incorrect. So what one child tells me about his life at mosque and what another child tells me about his life at church, they're both valid. They both need to be raised within the school, not ignored, and other children need to get the terminology right. It's no talking about the pack is doing this or the Christians doing that. We need to talk about exactly what happens and try to get the children to show each other. And then there is understanding, hopefully that leads to a harmony.
Same question, but in Muslim they call him Allah, and this religion we call him God.
What colour do you think he should be?
Light brown, because he was in a hot country.
If you meet a Christian, when you meet some of the Christian children around school, do you think they're stupid? You know, fancy believing that?
How do they know that in the Quran it says that they ain't God's son when the person who wrote it, how did they know? The person that wrote it, angel, came down and said the words.
So there. 4 o'clock, home time, but not for the Asian children. 6 or even 7 times a week, there's the journey to the mosque for another hour's instruction on the Quran and Islam. The mosque, in this case, a converted house in one of the backstreet terraces. It matters not. Such is the discipline of the faith that well over 100 children come here every evening. And they're often accompanied by Headmaster Smith.
Spend a lot of time in the community because we are here as a focal point for the people around us, and I don't try to take anything for granted. The closer my ear is to the ground, obviously the better I think I can do my job as head teacher.
The elders say their belief is their strength, and that's why the children are expected to go.
It is just normal, because they accepted that we live in a multicultural society, and they can meet with other children, and just in normal way, you know. And once they accept it, they don't feel any strange thing at all.
Certainly, the Swan report said that the Asians are one group that do well in school, and that a big part of this is probably due to the strong home and community background. But when it comes to the streets of St. Paul's, has all that understanding and effort in school mattered? Understanding and sympathy has so far done little about unemployment among young blacks, up to 60% in some places. And why do the West Indians in particular do so badly at school? Only 6% get decent CSE and O-level results, compared with 19% among other groups. They're just as bright. The Swan report says that West Indian families in particular are deprived because of prejudice and discrimination. Certainly in St. Paul's, the issue of race is overlaid with another problem all too common in inner city areas.
Other things occur because they're to do with poverty, just by living in the middle of the city, or they're to do with lack of space. People who can't just let their children out into a garden to play and find them easily. They're outside the front door and they've had to go down the road to somewhere else and mum's looking for them. That gives problems. When someone just wants to have a jolly good shout, but the neighbours are there, so they can't. That's a problem. When you want to actually go to a library nearby, there isn't one. That's a problem. When the teacher wants you to come back to school for some reason, but it's too dark, the street lighting isn't good enough, that's a problem. So all these things go together and we have to sort them out. And not so long ago, I was brought a book without its cover. Where was that cover? We eventually found out it had been used to put inside someone's shoe so that they could actually walk along a wet pavement that evening without getting their socks wet. Other problems are no electricity at home for a long time. That happens.
And even in the harmony of this apparently happy school, the seeds of racial prejudice have been sown. And it's not only between black and white.
We'd like to think that there isn't very much racism and prejudice here. It does emerge, usually in the time away from the classroom, the playtimes and the lunch times, when children have a chance to express their thoughts, perhaps in play. But they've learnt that things hurt. They've either heard things said to their parents or brothers and sisters, or they've had it said to them, so they pass it on. And although it may be a flippant remark, I think the hurt goes in pretty deep, because in the end you cannot change your colour. You might be able to change certain parts of how you look, You cannot change your colour, thank goodness. And children can be pretty cruel about that. They can be cruel about lots of things, but they snipe at each other.
So where do you think the prejudice begins then? Because you don't see it in very small children.
Not in younger children, I think. It's as you grow up, you realise it's like the chicken and the egg, really. You don't know where it really comes from.
I think it began at home, and adults started it. Because if they talk in front of their children about the other people's, I think they take it over there, you know, the children take from home.
We're going to talk about Saturday and get all the details right.
And the mothers, too, have no doubts about where even tiny children pick up their taunts.
Well, it's from the parents, isn't it? And from what they see around them, you know? I mean, my 2 girls I've got here, I've taught them that colour don't really matter. I mean, it's what you see in a person, you know? You can't just go around sort of identifying with people because of their colour. That'd be wrong.
But is it just sort of white and black, or is it more widespread than that?
No, it's between cultures, isn't it, and the racial problems. There's just as much animosity between, say, West Indian and Asian as there could be between just black and white in terms of colour. It's definitely cultures that problems come into.
Well, you're white mums. Don't you think that your children are disadvantaged in a school like this, where 90% of them are coloured, different races, different
They're in a
creeds?
minority, but then black people here are in a minority. It doesn't do them any harm to learn how it feels.
In St Paul's, the primary school is regarded with affection by most people. There's a view that if later schooling in the city was as caring, then the children would face fewer difficulties as they grow older. Cabot School has deliberately set out to make itself a centre of the community. People calling in during the day, evening activities, former pupils often drop in. These two with the news that they've both found part-time jobs. No easy task with the unemployment situation in St Paul's. How has life changed for them since they left the sheltered and protected atmosphere of their first school?
It hasn't changed for the worse, but it's opened your eyes to the outside world, really.
In what way? How?
Seeing how the other half reacts, people who don't live within the area, really. Seeing how different school teachers or headmasters or what do behave differently to Mr. Smith.
When you go to secondary school, that's when you get told that you're different, you see. And then you've got to try and fit in.
Does it matter?
Not really, I don't think so anyway. But there's other people that think it does matter.
And have things improved since the riots exactly 5 years ago? Certainly money has been spent, there's been a lot of talking, and there are those who stoutly defend St Paul's as an exciting, colourful place to live. But there are others who are despondent that what money there was largely misspent, wasted by lack of thought and lack of control, and that things haven't really changed much.
I think in some ways it's deteriorated. There has been cosmetic dressing of the situation. There are trees where there weren't trees. There is better paintwork than there were on certain windows, but go beyond the front door and you see that there are things that people need and they can't have. So I would say that the atmosphere is not entirely relaxed. I think there's a lot of wanting, there's a lot of poverty that doesn't easily show itself.
There are signs that the approach in this school and others like it is having some success, but the central question remains. Why, after all this care, do the youngsters who leave this school as bright and happy children of 11 become the rebellious teenagers of the street corner so soon after?
They become disillusioned. Something happens as they go through adolescence where all the information that we've tried to give them, all the experiences we've tried to give them, all the trust we've tried to give them, seems to just be taken apart. It's to do with the racism in society. They just think, I can't win whatever I do. They then test it out on their home, they test it out on the job market, they test it out on each other, and in the end, it's better to go with your own mates and stand on the road, feeling that it's right, when you really know it's not, than it is to go and challenge the system. You grow your hair a bit longer, you ride around in cars you shouldn't be in, you go and take somebody else's thing, because in the end you get some esteem that way. I dared to do that, but it's easier to say I failed because it's wrong than to say I dared to go for a job interview and the guy didn't want me. That's uncomfortable.
How do you feel when you see that happen to your children?
It makes me angry. It makes me angry. It makes me angry that employers don't see what I see. I see these children from 5 to 11. They are exceptionally bright sometimes. It comes undone because they become disillusioned. Then employers and those in universities just won't take the initiative to bring those youngsters and their potential into play in the society in which we all live.
There is some success, but it's only a start.
What future do you think these children have?
I don't know. I think the present situation where unemployment is so severe, and whether we like to admit it or not, the ethnic minority groups are at the bottom of the pile. So I personally would like to think there was a lot of hope, but I can't say it. But I'm a pessimist by nature, I think, anyway.
Stand up, please. Right, I want some shortish ones first. So who's the shortest? Can you just go and stand over there? Oh, you look great. Now the magic word on 3 is sausages. Look at me then, everybody. Right, 1, 2, 3. That's lovely. That's lovely. Look at me. Look at me. Lovely. That was nice.